So now we're recording.
Okay. My little lights come on to say we're recording.
There you go. So here we go. My name is Rebekah Hirsch, and I've been an astrologer for over 30 years. I trained with Liz Green and Howard Sasportis at the Centre for Psychological Astrology in London in the 1980s. And an energy healer. I went on and trained at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing in America in the 90s and 2000s. And after that, I trained as a facilitator of voice dialogue, a transpersonal process of voice dialogue. And out of all that, I wrote a book, Charting the Soul, which is bringing it all together, bringing the energy, the astrology, and the body-mind process work, which is voice dialogue, bringing it all together. And when I was writing the book, the person that I went to, my editor really, was my dear friend Fern, who is a brilliant astrologer. She's really a better astrologer than me. Also a voice dialogue, a leader in voice dialogue. And we've known each other all those years, 35 years or something, and we always talk astrology. And we decided to make a video of us talking astrology. Over to you, Fern.
Well, I can't I haven't got all those credentials because I'm basically pretty well self-taught as far as astrology goes. I've been involved since 1970. And in 1977, I did a one-year course with a very wonderful, eccentric astrologer who came from very much the old way. So my very early astrological training had a quite strong esoteric level to it and very spiritual and not so much the psychological. But I've incorporated that through my time because of my interest in astrology and psychology and spirituality. So that they're kind of, for me, they've kind of come together more through like hands-on, which is very much my thing, being a Virgo, and just watching charts and learning and reading and talking to people like Rebekah.
Yep.
And over the years, it's really been noticing what happens in my chart and other people's charts. And I guess I've been looking at charts since about 1977, and just noticing how they work really and how it works. And that's been my interest in just that practical application of how it works and how it can be helpful, because being a Virgo, I love to be helpful. And my background prior to voice dialogue and astrology is breath work and lots of rebirthing work, for many years, and working with street kids and the kind of trauma that I came across in that work, and quite revolutionary ways, I guess, of working with street kids, setting up a place of my own where I was got funding from the New South Wales government to set up a project where we utilised all sorts of things, including astrology, and I did the charts of all the kids. So looking at how that worked and also how to bring astrology into practical work with
Yep.
teenagers and help them to get to know themselves and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like been all through my life,
Yep.
and also I'm working with flower essences and integrating astrology and flower essences, and I work with them with my kids, the kids I work with. So the other thing I've been very involved with is counsel, sitting in circles and speaking from the heart in circles.
Yep.
So that's probably enough about me. I've also got a Capricorn ascendant, and all these planets lining up that Rebekah and I might be talking about, will be talking about, happen to be on my ascendant. So I'm feeling quite strongly motivated and connected with that process.
Yes. So I think we were both just talking, and I think anybody who is sort of, even vaguely interested in astrology should know that for years, Pluto has been traveling through the sign of Capricorn, and in 2020, it's really it's been such an emphasis on the sign of Capricorn. There's three planets, Pluto and Saturn, but then joined by Jupiter. They've been traveling, to and fro, all through this year in the sign of Capricorn, bringing, going with this astonishing and unexpected world events and political revelations. And we're kind of getting used to it in a way, but and what we thought, it's coming to a climax in mid-November. Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto will be closer together in the sign of Capricorn than for thousands of years. I've looked right back, and in 1894 years BC, these three planets were together in Capricorn. And they just I found this on the web. The planets were together in Capricorn. Check it out. That's my phone. So this is an extraordinary, we know it's an extraordinary time. Look at what's happening, but there's also an extraordinary astrological event accompanying it. And as Fern was just saying to me a minute ago, when they are in Capricorn, the fact that this stellium, these three planets, have come together in Capricorn, it gives enormous weight to what is Capricorn about? What is the essence? What's the message of Capricorn? That these three big planets are digging away, bringing into consciousness, because it's a shift of consciousness that is trying to happen. I think every astrologer on the planet is saying that at the end of 2020, the human race is trying to enter a new phase. And right now, we've got another few weeks where this stellium meets it culminates. They get within 5 degrees of each other, these three planets. Very, very rare. Means that if you look through a telescope and you looked out, you would see Jupiter, then Saturn, then Pluto lined up. And, with their energies pouring down together towards the Earth. And so I thought that the reason that we really want to do this now is to capture these last moments, these last weeks of this giant, I don't know what the word is, this bowl, this crucible of energy that's happening in Capricorn. And
Rebecca, you can say a bit about. Well, are you going to say a bit about what happened back to 4,000 years ago?
It's about in Babylon.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Okay. Well, yeah, okay, I will say that. What happened in Babylon? That's right, 4,000 years ago. Birth of the Babylonian civilization, and so this little city-state of Babylon emerges at exactly this time, where these three stars conjunct each other in the sky. And getting on for 100 years later, the king, he was the king, Hammurabi, the ruler of Babylon, emerged, and there's a famous artifact which is Hammurabi's code, which is carved on an ancient piece of stone. What this was a very early sign of lawmaking. So Hammurabi's code is saying these are the laws, by which we live. A lot of them are about trade. A lot of them are about money. They're also about status, about, the people at the top, the kind of slaves are nowhere. They have no rights at all, and so on. But it's the birth of the law. And I'm not the only person you think of Moses and the tablets that he brought down from the mountain. This idea that human beings need regulation, that they need guidance, that they need structure.
Yeah.
To create a civilization that's so going from a sort of barbaric, times, well, I'm not, but you know, where might is right, where just the big people just come and beat up the little people and take what they want, and creating a framework where people have more protection and more consistency of the
He also, because he also brought together the all the tribes that were warring with each other and actually made a unified
yep,
city-state,
yep,
didn't he?
yep,
Which actually had ended up being the whole area, which was, I think, it was the used to it was where we have Iraq today, wasn't it?
right, yeah, yeah,
Unified. And they, through that, they actually lived in, you know, some kind of peace for 1500 years. So it
yeah,
was all pretty sort of spectacular in some ways, even
yeah,
though the slaves missed out, and women, of course, missed
yes,
out. But it did have that, it did bring in something that was pretty unique.
yeah.
And
I
at
do.
the time, it was useful.
Yes. So maybe, Fern, you'd like to say something about Capricorn, you know, the
Yeah.
um
So I just like to, I mean, obviously the negative version of Capricorn is, you know, it's negative. When I say negative, I want to make a qualification, because it's within the negative that something quite powerful and positive can bloom. But part of the negative, well, what appears to be negative about Capricorn is restrictions and uh, and contraction. And we certainly see that in what we've had in the world in the last year. Enormous amounts of restrictions on travel, on people's freedom. And this is, of course, bringing an opposite reaction as well. But these sorts of restrictions, this kind of contraction, this moving into the world, you know, the initiation into the material world of contraction and uh, apparent lack of freedom, and all of the, and law and rules and all of these things, is is also that stepping into the manifest material world. And whether it was, you know, in whatever way it shows up, there is the opportunity within that for a different kind of freedom. And that is the freedom to actually, it is an inner freedom. It's a freedom to, uh, you know, it's like that confinement, or that sort of contraction that Saturn brings, and Saturn being the ruler of Capricorn brings, enables something else to happen. However, that requires quite a big embracing of the what we call it, is it the Senax? Is that right,
yeah,
Rebecca?
yeah, yep,
Senax and the pure, because the youthful part of us, and I'm saying this in terms of what, that we all contain both of these, and the youthful part of us rebels against these sorts of restrictions that, you know, I don't mean just the sort of restrictions we've had this year, but just the restriction of going into a field where you're required to do a lot of learning. And for example, any journey that where we're requiring enormous amounts of discipline, and where there's a need for commitment to a long-term project of some sort, which will require enormous fortitude and strength and commitment and loyalty to whatever that goal is. Climbing the mountain, that's a very Capricorn thing, to climb that mountain, and the kind of discipline that is required to do that, and the patience too to do that, and the persistence and the perseverance through difficult times and challenges and confrontations. All of this sort of what can be seen as kind of our everyday world reality, but also in terms of spiritual reality, what I call our capital R reality, requires us to face what is, to be present with what is. And I think this is a very Capricornian subject, because uh, you know, and that youthful part of us, that pure part of us, doesn't want to know about that. And even, you know, even you see that in people with lots of Capricorn in their charts, they planets in Capricorn, they hold back from taking on that mantle of responsibility. And when I say responsibility, we have two ways of seeing that. We've got the old paradigm responsibility, which is, you know, has a place, but we also have something new, which is our ability to respond. And I think that's what comes out of the real elder Capricorn energy. And so I kind of like to talk a bit about something that I've discovered going back to my roots in esoteric astrology. I've been doing a bit of that. And I want to quote something from one of the original esoteric astrologers, um, Alice Bailey, and her teacher, Master D.K. And they had a sort of a little phrase for each sign. And the phrase for Capricorn is, "Lost am I in light supernal, yet on that light I turn my back." And that is the sort of image of the Capricorn who has actually come to, you know, gone beyond that material world and actually come to that realization of oneness and light, and then is prepared to go back into the world of the material world where, you know, where the life isn't so easy sometimes, where as yeah, as my teacher Adyashanti says, where, you know, the rubber hits the tarmac, you know, and it's like, oh, and that you're coming down from this lovely lofty world of oneness and light, and suddenly you come into reality of the everyday world again, where there's quite a lot of harsh stuckness, and you know, there's decay, and there's sickness, and there's death, and there's loss, and there's bereavement, and there's suffering. And in a way, this is the within that the structure of Capricorn, and by meeting these obstacles and challenges, the eldership, the elder and the mature spiritual leader, teacher, etc., is born. And for me, this is the gift of Capricorn. And one of the things I found when I looked into the esoteric model, and to a certain extent, you know, I think Rebecca and I have seen this in psychological models too, but the esoteric model, there's three aspects of Capricorn. So, you know, like we have in, say, Scorpio, we have, you know, the scorpion, the snake, the serpent, and the phoenix, for example. In Capricorn, they also saw three stages. And so the first stage is the mountain goat. And that's the kind of the goat who, you know, that is really involved in the material world. So it can be really sensual and, you know, yummy, and also is set on acquiring success in the material world, and can be ruthless, can stand on people's fingers, and can climb up that mountain of success and acquire huge amounts of money and huge amounts of accolades and power. And that one has two horns. And interestingly, in esoteric astrology, they see those two horns as representing duality and polarity, and that we are in that place. It is a tearing, because that requires that sort of Capricornian ambitious, successful, although it does develop the discipline and that commitment, it also requires a disconnection from soul, from spirit, from feeling. And, you know, in the true sort of Capricornian symbol glyph, you know, the image has the goat with the tail of the fish, and so it's pointing to something else. Anyway, so we have this first one, the mountain goat with his two horns, which are very much to do with polarity, duality, of which we've seen a lot of in the world in the last, well, always, but very strongly, exaggeratedly in the world today. And then the second stage is what's sometimes called the sea goat or the fish goat. And this is pointing to the glyph, which is a very magical and mysterious looking glyph. And this points to the next stage of Capricorn, which is when the Capricorn recognizes, turns around and realizes it's frozen in this rigid energy that is the characterology that Rebekah's spoken about in her book, and recognizes the need to incorporate the sea energy, the feeling, the soul, the feeling side. And then that rigidity starts to melt. So it's like this frozen energy that's about which I'm very much seeing is the old paradigm, which is this world where everything's hierarchical and structured and based on law, and the soul has been lost. That other side has been lost. And then in the model of the second stage, that the fishtail is honored. And so the trauma, the collective trauma, starts to actually dissolve and melt as they're starting to wake up, as a sort of early awakening, because of course the mountain goat is asleep and very much caught up in, very identified with position and, egoically identified. So in voiced terms, very much caught up in an achieving primary self and a lot of pushing and doing. And then the last stage is the unicorn. And this was a really new thing for me. I know about the sea goat and stuff, but I hadn't actually kind of ever seen this unicorn thing. But I was very excited to find it. So the unicorn, of course, has one horn.
Yeah.
And so it's representing the going beyond polarity, going beyond duality, to embrace, by embracing these two opposites, the senex and the pue, all of the material and the spiritual, the feeling and the, all, and the rational mind, all these polarities being embraced. And therefore that elder Capricorn being able to take, as Gisanti says, the one seat. So instead of coming from this warring inner self, there's a sort of an ability to really step up and come from the heart, and that heart, through the journey of Capricorn, there's an enormous understanding of matter, of the body. We have Pan with this lovely central energy. And so this soulful energy and spiritual awakening can then be embodied, and in the enormous presence of a character of that stature who actually embodies this presence, and is able to be a great influence in the world. And I have a few examples of this, but I'll just continue. So this, the possibility of the Capricorn turning away from the light is no longer turning away from the light, but actually bringing the light with it through, down from the mountain. There's a very strong mountain element here, and becoming that mountain and in the world as this, this person of great fortitude, patience, perseverance, and ability to be in the midst of whatever hits us, the most horrendous stuff. And, having gone through a journey where there's been enormous loss, and kind of paring back to the skeleton in a way, like the winter, which is where, of course, we celebrate Capricorn. And you just get those, the sort of the tree that no longer has any leaves. So you get that sort of very embodied, grounded, present energy of the true elder, who also has its is shining its light. And what they say in the esoteric version, I have to quote this because I really liked it, if I can find it, is that the unicorn is able to stay true to the heart and aligned with divine will, energetically present in its body. Its horns point to the heart of humanity, and supports us to open our hearts to allow our souls to infuse our being with the light of the soul. But so bringing all of it together, going beyond the division of spirit and matter or any of these divisions, to bring about what we might like to call heaven on earth. Anyway, so I really liked that journey, because it sort of spoke to me of some of the really important elements of this doorway, which I see us moving through during this time. The Capricorn is always, and Saturn has always been a doorway, because Saturn has always been the doorway between the personal planets and the transpersonal planets.
Gatekeeper.
Capricorn is very much the doorway, the peak of material, of what it can be on to be successful in this world, and then the point where we've had all the success we want in the material world, it still isn't bringing any happiness, and there's suddenly a wake up to the importance of the soul and the importance of spiritual oneness, and the fact that we are one. We aren't these separate little selves. However, this separate little self has supported us to really truly embrace our autonomy, to no longer give our power away, which is the old way of giving our power, like back in Babylonian times, where the one king had all the authority and everyone gave their power away to this authority. And part of the journey of Capricorn is to come back to our own authority and to go beyond this polarity of giving our authority and being victims to others' authority, to return to our own authority, and thereby coming into our autonomy, so that in that autonomy we are no longer prey to other people's opinions or anything, that we can actually be in true service, in true world service, and do what is necessary from the heart.
Great. So what I think you've done is speak a lot about the essence of Capricorn. And I'm going to say a bit about, might edit this in earlier on. So I think the journey of Pluto through Capricorn, if I just say that Pluto in the skies entered the sign of Capricorn in 2008, in the weeks around, I think it came in just before the financial crash. I know the financial crash didn't happen overnight, that it was, Pluto was in Sagittarius, then it moved into Capricorn, and suddenly the truth is out, that our society is running on falsehood. It's running, and in a very non-Capricornian way, possibly in a very Sagittarian way, in a very Jupiterian way. We're running up massive debts that have no backing, and Pluto enters Capricorn and sort of pulls the rug out, and the house of cards falls down.
Yeah.
And in the years since then, we've seen Pluto journeying through Capricorn, and there's been. So what I wanted to say is that one way of looking at Capricorn is very much to do with the world, to do with civilization, to do with the structures, the form that we give to our societies. So it's associated with banking, with law, with the police, with politics, with ambition and achievement. These are things that go with the sign of Capricorn. I think you said, Fern, it's an earth sign. It's a cardinal earth sign. It is very much to do in the first place with life on earth. Being in a body, having a job or not having a job, having a house or not having a house, having money or not, these very practical, being here on planet Earth, and Sagittarius or Aquarius, the signs either side of it might be more in the head and more about vision. And Capricorn is it real? Does it work? Carpentry, engineering, mechanics. These are things that go with Capricorn, building things, making them work, making them function, gears and cogs, clocks, watchmakers. And so in those years since Pluto entered Capricorn, what we've seen is like Pluto's been like a mole tunneling along underneath society and every now and then throwing up, yet another piece of horrible stuff that we don't want to know about. God, I remember when ISIS started up, and without going into the politics of ISIS in the Middle East and the atrocities committed by the West in the Middle East, but some of the news coming out about ISIS, beheadings and burnings, and it's Pluto saying, is this what you want? Is this the world you want to live in? Is it okay that these young women are going to be put to death if they refuse to become sex slaves? And then we hear about I don't know why I started there, because it's just one of, we've had Black Lives Matter, we have Me Too. What an astonishing thing that was. When this whole idea of sexual abuse, it's like, actually just about every woman has experienced sexual abuse of one kind or another, to a greater or lesser degree. The terrible wars in the Middle East, which are, which seem to be terribly corrupt, about, the money and power, the Russia, China, America, raising and toppling little countries because they've got oil or minerals.
And it's all about power, isn't it, Hannah?
All about power, because Pluto is the archetype that has to do with power, and but it's in our structures. These are, in our world, it's normal for women to experience sexual abuse. It's normal for Black people to go in fear of their lives in the USA. Sorry, that's much too, I can't say that, but because of shootings, because America, there's been all the stuff about the guns, the NRA in the USA, the mass shootings, these are all Capricornian things, or these are all Pluto in Capricorn.
Well, these are all it's the Capricorn that's become corrupted, though, isn't it?
Well, it's Pluto saying, look at this corruption.
It's digging down, and it's bringing that corruption to the surface.
Saying, this is not good, this is not truth, this is not honest, this is not fair. Do you want this? Is this the world you want? Is this the way you want, society to go? And these questions are being asked in so many ways, repeatedly. And then we get to 2020, and we get the goddamn coronavirus. And I don't know of any astrologer who really saw it coming. I think there are one or two people who said, anything could happen in 2020, pandemics, so on, that I thought there was going to be a war, because Mars joined in with this stellium in Capricorn in January, and Trump started to be sort of threatening to Iraq, and I thought, oh, here we go. No, it was the virus, which has changed the world. And in that time, I'm speaking in the Western world because I happen to know that the virus has not affected some countries, it hasn't affected Africa very badly, not mid-sub-Saharan Africa. But in the West, having to stop, stuck in our houses, you know, with ourselves, having to reflect, having to be silent, having to be still. And that's the essence of Capricorn that Fern's been talking about. And to confront everything. The, you know, all the questions that have been thrown up by the virus, and masks and not masks, and self-isolation, and social you know, all these new terms. But it's a lot about society. It's a lot about political and financial decisions. And is this what we want? And I think in this summer of the Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter conjunction, this year of the conjunction of these three mighty planets, and our civilization is up in the air in every way.
It's crumbling, Rebecca, really, isn't it? It's crumbling, falling to pieces.
Yeah.
What we call civilization.
And what we're seeing, I think, with some of the leaders, which is what you started by saying, it's this throwback to old models of civilization. They don't work anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I think Johnson and Trump, they go with a kind of archetype of a cowboy, of a maverick, of a gambler.
And Putin as well. He likes the cowboy look, doesn't he?
Yeah. And that, you know, that might have worked in the early days of the West. Well, I did define worked, but it certainly isn't, doesn't fit with my definition of what's working today. And so here we have this, you know, this kind of this crucible, and it's full of maggots. Yeah. It's full of decay. It's full of things that have gone wrong, and that human beings have made the wrong choices, or not wrong, but that's my phone.
Well, we've been coming from, I think the thing is oh, she's gone.
I'm back.
We're coming from this sense of our little separation. We're all separate, little separate beings struggling to survive. And I think when everything's coming from this feeling of intense separation rather than a sense of I think a sense of the oneness of life, then of course it becomes incredibly contracted and incredibly sort of well, it can't possibly work, because we're not separate. We're not these little tiny separate sort of old Capricorn kind of beings running around having to look after our own little affairs and, you know, accumulate as much as we can so that we'll be able to survive whatever, whether we're little tiny, you know, whoever we are, whether we're sort of the kind of Donald Trumps, or whether we are somebody in a little business trying to survive, or you know, it can't work that way anymore.
Yep. And that's very much what Capricorn is about, is, does it work? Is it functioning? Is it supporting life? No, it isn't. You know, somehow we've come into this cul-de-sac where the systems, political, philosophical, moral, that we have in place, they don't support life. You know, too many things are going very badly wrong. And that, I think, is what the journey of Pluto through Capricorn is all about. Is showing us, Pluto bringing this, all the disturbed stuff out from the underworld, saying, look at this. This is what you do. This is the world you live in. Do you realize the consequences of you, you know, buying all that plastic and using all that plastic? Do you see where it ends up? In an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. You know, you can't just chuck it out of your car window and it's gone away. It's living on forever.
Consequence is another part of Capricorn, aren't they? Yeah, that deep responsibility of Capricorn is about consequences of our actions.
Yeah, and it's not in a judgmental way. It's just, look, plastic doesn't break down.
Consequences just is, isn't it? It's not. just reality. It's
Yeah.
just facing
And
reality,
I think
stopping
one
still
of
and
the
running.
words we're using was responsibility, and this idea of the puer and the senex. There's a sort of idea of anarchy, you know, freedom, and America and the land of the free and all that, you know, freedom to own a gun, so that, you know, and it's a misuse of the word freedom. There's a misinterpretation of what freedom is, because freedom actually, oh, you know, what is it? Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. And
Yes,
Jesus says it too.
yes,
If you want to be free, the only way to be free is to be responsible, is to be grown up. And if
yeah,
you're not, this is what we end up with. We end up with carnage.
yeah,
If the adolescents are saying, I'm going to have that plastic thing because I want it, I want, I don't want to say it's in a judgmental way, but it's like that. It's karma, it's consequences. It's like, if you go down this road, there will be consequences. This is what will happen. People will get hurt. And the Capricornian thing is to say, stop.
yes, yeah.
Limitation.
That's the elder, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
That elder who says, "Hey, what are we doing?
yeah.
Stop! Look at, stop running," because that's another thing. It's like there's that running away, distracting, watching anything, avoiding anything, running away from it instead of, and in a way, no matter what we think of lockdown, it actually
Yeah,
gave us a chance to stop and go, hang on, look at what we're doing here.
yeah.
Look at this.
And to be responsible with people caring for each other, and bringing,
Yeah,
delivering food to people who couldn't leave their homes, and the whole thing of wearing a mask. Oh, God knows, there's enough crazy people, enough people out there who, you know, who have objections to wearing a mask. But the whole idea of wearing a mask is that we're protecting each other. Even
yes,
if you think it's a load of bullshit, which, you know, I
yes,
know some people do, but then, you know, the reason you do that, the reason you do social distancing, the reason you wear a mask, the reason you self-isolate, is to protect people as well as yourself. We're,
yes,
you know, we do it together, do the responsible thing.
yes.
And
And you know, wherever, you know, I mean, there is, you know, and I'm very aware that there are ways of seeing things that suggest that maybe that is not the only way of doing it.
yeah,
However, it's coming from that, as Rebecca says, it's coming from a sense of responsibility and care.
yeah,
You know, no matter how people want to look at it, it is coming from care. All of the, you know, it is tracing back to a care, and you know, everything really that's happening in a way, if we follow it back, is coming from a care. Now, no matter how misplaced it might be, you know, I know some people see, well, there's many things, we could go down many roads here,
yes,
but all of it is coming in the end from some form of care, even if that might be slightly misplaced. The thing is that it is something trying to be born. I think it's something.
yeah.
It's kind of trying to come. We're trying to come into something different,
Abs-
and
a- Absolutely, yeah. And um, as we speak, so we've got we're recording this on, I don't know what the date is, but anyway, we're coming towards
29th, the
Samhain,
29th of October, dear.
29th of October. We've got a lot, you know, coming up. We've got the US presidential election, for good or bad, whatever that means. We've got Samhain, um, but actually we have a few weeks. So what I mean by that is that in the next few weeks, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto will come closer together than they have in thousands of years. And
Yeah,
that is around the November the 12th. And after that, they will separate. They, you know, Jupiter moves much faster than Pluto, and faster than Saturn, but Saturn and Jupiter will whiz away from Pluto. And in December, at the winter solstice, Jupiter and Saturn will enter the sign of Aquarius. What that means is there's a way in which we have a last few precious weeks in which to really take in the message of Capricorn, because the energy is going to shift. It's going to shift to Aquarius. You look at any astrology site, they're already talking about Aquarius. I'm going to be giving a talk about Aquarius in a few weeks' time. But right now, if you're meditating for the full moon or for the new moon, take in this energy of Capricorn, because what is the lesson? What have we been learning? What do we need to know? You know, all the things that Fern was talking about earlier on. You know, the puer and the senex, you can't have your absolute freedom without absolute responsibility. They go together.
Yeah.
But there's more. There's the whole thing about Capricorn being an earth sign, this cardinal earth sign, this beautiful, beautiful planet. You know, this incredible existence in form. You know, what is that? And coming into a body, coming into a life, an incarnation on planet Earth, it's such a Capricornian thing to do, to come from a kind of infinite contact with spirit of consciousness, just being part of universal consciousness, and coming, you know, in this incredible focus into this body, into these cells and bones and nerves, and the limitations, you know, that you can't fly. We are going to die. You will get old. You will get sick.
And you will lose, you
And
know,
lose
everything you
everything.
love. We will lose everything we love. It's one of the tenets of the grief tending work I've done.
Yeah.
Everything we love, we will lose. And that is part of the message of Capricorn, that we step up and we just face that. And we can love deeply from our heart. And that it's okay to love and lose. It's all of this is okay. We can be with it all. We are vast beings who can be with this, and we can come to that place of that one heart. And really, if we can operate from that place as humanity, more and more, if we can operate from that place of our oneness instead of our separation, and bring that gift of Capricorn in, of, you know, the creating that, you know, I mean, we haven't talked about the Saturn, and how Saturn was the
We'll come on to that in a minute.
Yeah, well, we talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But that the possibility of a sort of, like I mentioned before, that, you know, really, you know, one of the sayings of Jesus in the Gospel according to Thomas is, heaven is spread across the earth, and we don't see it. Man doesn't see it. Humanity isn't seeing it, and it, you know, it is here now.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of starting to see that and live from that place. And I think that, you know, that message of Capricorn, the elder, is really a great sort of pointer to that.
Yeah.
And in a way, Jesus' story is a great pointer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Jesus, he, you know, from the moment he started his teaching, he was constantly using parables about the earth and about simple things like harvesting and growing and loving someone who's run away and bringing them back into your heart, and, you know, being able to share food, and, you know, there's so many things, and picking up your cross and walking, even though he knew already he may die. He was staying aligned with that truth that was coming from him, and we don't normally all have to do that. But, you know, that sort of whole thing, everything he did was a pointer to this possibility of Capricorn, of being the elder who is considering everything all the time, considering the whole planet's well-being, all beings' well-being, and also being able to stay true to to stay autonomous and true to our destiny, and bring our gifts. You know, don't bury them, bring our gifts. I need to hear myself say that.
Yeah.
And it's like we're going to walk through a gateway, and in a way, this is a build up to it, and in a way, this last uh, lineup is that gateway. And if we bring that message of Capricorn really through in its most developed as mature beings, even if we're mature egos, it's probably better than not. That we can then go into Aquarius, into that Aquarian energy with the true gifts that enable Aquarius to really bring its light to the world.
Yeah, yeah. I have the inclination to sort of say a bit about Jupiter now.
Yes, you say a bit about Jupiter.
Got,
You're better on Jupiter than I am.
I would like to talk about, Jupiter. Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto, about those three archetypes. And the reason that what you were saying was making me think about Jupiter is because what we were talking about earlier on. What the hell is going on with truth? Because I've got people who I think are pretty good friends who I think have got very lost in ideologies about or interpretations of the meaning of this time.
Yeah.
And when you were speaking of Capricorn, I was thinking of that oak tree energy of Capricorn. It's like, well, what's real? What is real? If you put your feet on the ground and you stop talking and you listen to the wind and to your heart, and you look at the, all the people go on about science, you look at the evidence, what is true, what is real. And the thing about Jupiter, and we have to be so careful of this with Jupiter in Aquarius, Jupiter really likes being right.
You love being right.
And I'm the king of the gods, and I've been speaking.
Enjoys being slightly inflated as well.
Absolutely inflated. The opposite. So Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, the principle of limitation. While you are incarnate on planet Earth, you will experience limitation. You will have to deal with limitation, and you will have to bring your consciousness to limitation. And in the end, you and everybody you love will die. And that is just the truth. That's the way.
And there's enormous freedom, but true freedom in utilizing limitation to open our hearts.
Yeah, and
there's wonderful potential for real freedom.
Yeah.
Sorry, Han. Go on.
I was thinking, I'll come back to that. And Jupiter is the principle of expansion, and of course, I don't know whether it's because of the way we're brought up in the West or whether it's natural. We like Jupiter. Jupiter is in traditional astrology is called the greater benefic, the bringer of good fortune. And Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, is known as the greater malefic, the bringer of misfortune. And, Saturn is the gatekeeper trying to keep things under control, but Jupiter goes, Jupiter just leaps into a hot air balloon and sails off over the gates. I mean, we love Jupiter. Jupiter makes you lucky.
Brings laughter and joy.
Yeah. However, there is something about this conjunction with Jupiter and Pluto that is quite dark.
Because Pluto, it can, when they're joined together, can bring quite an obsessive, compulsive kind of inflation, can't it?
Yeah. And Jupiter goes for the inflation. And I know this because, my guides told me, kind of thing, that this is, and
it is, Jupiter is the god of gods, so it's far up in the air. It's really off the, even though in Capricorn it's kind of trying to bring it down a bit to root it down again, but it is up here, isn't it? Yeah. It's very much all these methodologies and all these kind of philosophies.
And I think Jupiter as the principle of expansion, I think it I don't know, but it probably goes with the virus. It was like when Jupiter entered Capricorn in December and started moving towards Pluto, that is when the virus spread across the world. So this principle of expansion, and things go, you know, everything expanding, and it's a wonderful planet, you know. It's a visionary planet. So Saturn sets the gate, and so, and your Saturn person is thinking, well, all right, we've reached the end of the road, and Jupiter can always see over the horizon and see possibilities and say, no, go that way, you know, or let's get on a plane, or, you know, travel, go. Beautiful, wonderful energy with Jupiter, and I think at the moment we're seeing we're getting a lesson, if we could take it, in the risks of Jupiter. Because I think there are people out there telling downright lies. Politicians certainly are telling lie after lie after lie. I mean, maybe they always did, and we're just finding out because of Facebook. But it is pretty shocking. The complete indifference to the truth. Yeah.
Part of that inflated ego.
Yes.
Sort
Just
of
say what the hell
runs
you
off
want.
on its own stories.
Yeah. And then I'm just really struck at the moment with all the people with their different theories about COVID, like masks, not masks. No, I'm not going to be controlled. I'm not having that, you know, vaccine from that evil Bill Gates, or you've got to have the vaccine. If you don't have the vaccine, you're a very bad person and you're going to kill the rest of us.
You will be
Excommunicated? No.
excommunicated.
Anyway, there's something
But
about...
that's another thing about Capricorn, though, isn't it? The status quo, and when, you know, when the sort of the status quo, the loudest voice, in a way, the biggest voice, which can be a bit of Jupiter as well thrown in there, but the status quo is quite a strong Capricornian thing, where everyone sticks with this is the way we're seeing it, and this is the standard way, and nothing should rock that boat. And I think when you add Jupiter to that, you know, it could go really wonderfully well with Jupiter being grounded in reality, but it also can go wonderfully wrong, which is...
I think we're seeing quite a lot of that. I mean, it's very hard to fathom what is going on, but so a bit more about Jupiter. Not everybody knows that Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, was very strong in the charts of the Nazi leaders. So there was Hitler and Goebbels and I can't remember the names of the others. It does go with fanaticism and fundamentalism, to the point of, you know, I'm going to kill you because you don't agree with me, or because you're Jewish, or because you're black, you know. And though that's the thing to think about with Jupiter, is be aware of when you're in, because it goes with enthusiasm and joy and light. And so you're filling up with joy and laughter and light, and just be aware of the moment when that tips over into fanaticism, fundamentalism, lying, you know, distorting the truth, to get your own way, to willfulness, you know, because those are the negative end of the spectrum of Jupiter.
Yeah.
But the other end is vision. And a connection to the divine, and so what you... Yeah, it's as though some of the weird distortions is people trying to access their inner knowing, their inner wisdom, but it seems to be coming out in sort of with a lot of deception in there, a lot of pixie dust.
Yeah, and distortion, I think.
I think a lot of distortion.
Distortion by, I think, this
aggrandizement.
Yes.
Yeah.
And inflation can mean that sort of intuition, that voice of intuition, which is very strong in Jupiter, is getting a bit lost and a bit confused. And so people are sort of, and so people are actually losing connection with their own vision, really.
Yeah.
It may have started with something that was kind of, that had some vision that may come from real love, and may come from a real longing to be, to do something really wonderful, and it's become extremely distorted, and it's running away with itself. There's something about that
Yeah.
Jupiter that can run away with itself.
It does. It does. You talked about learning astrology over the years because you learn by when you get a transit going in your own chart and you think, oh, okay, I really know that energy of Jupiter, because I almost get that taste of adrenaline in my mouth.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. On a really strong Jupiter day, it's hard to contain. It's like the energy is so much, it's like wild horses.
Yes. Yeah.
Seeking adventure, go and do this, go and do that. And
it's a temptation in a way too. I mean, I was thinking of going back to Jesus, but that temptation in the wilderness, when that voice is tempting him, like, you could own all of this. This could be all yours, you could be the king of the kings.
Yes.
There's that, like Jupiter does, it can hold that. And it can be very subtle in that way. You see, you really know the truth. See, those people out there, they don't know it. You know it.
That's exactly what's happening, isn't it, Fern? And I think that, coming back to Jesus, because Jesus was born, and I mean, obviously, we're not talking about historical, but he's a Capricorn.
Yeah, and we celebrate, whether he was born in Capricorn or not, it doesn't really matter. We celebrate and have celebrated this for a long time.
He's a Capricornian Messiah,
endeavoring to bring that energy through.
Yeah.
And his pointers, always those pointers that sort of say, come back, I'm not going to be tempted by all these, these things.
Yeah.
I'm coming back to how am I aligning with divine will?
Yeah.
And if divine will says no, then I don't go that way. I come back to that. No matter how
tempting,
difficult it might look.
Yeah. Not only is there temptation over here, like you can become the ruler of it all, and if you go this way, it's intense suffering, it's crucifixion, and yet still he knows what is the truth.
Yes.
And I sort of was really struck with because I hadn't associated it in the past. I hadn't known that the esoteric astrologers associated unicorn with Capricorn. And I just, God, the imagery of the unicorn, intense vulnerability, purity, and love, because the only person that this gentle, wild, magical creature, the only person who can come near it is a young girl. And it's the tenderness and the purity and the untouched innocence and love of the child.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the heart of Capricorn. That's what's hidden inside all the, so all all the worldly achievements, and Capricorn can be very controlling, and it goes with the patriarchy and all this stuff. But inside of that, what it's trying to protect is this beautiful, sacred essence.
Yes.
And that's what we're being asked to find at the moment in these.
Reconnect with.
Yeah. And what's happening?
Even that
Jupiter, they're going, oh yeah, I'm going off with Jupiter down this rabbit hole, or I'm going to get power and wealth over here, and I'm going to jump on this bandwagon. And for some of us, it's like, all the sweet people in this country who don't want little children to be starving at Christmas, no matter what their parents are doing, no matter how profligate their parents are or whatever, the children should have a meal every day, a hot meal. And all the people in this country who don't care how we do it, they just want to know those kids are going to be fed. Well, that's a very Capricornian sweetness.
Yeah,
being
it is.
very responsible, and look, we're not going to hurt the children, you know, we'll um
And
but
I think I need to pull us back
yeah,
to the inner child as well, because
exactly.
even those who appear to be so callous and cut off that they appear to not care about the children, have a little hurting person
Yes,
inside. And
yes,
I want to bring that back, because I think part of this, the sort of the what I wanted to bring in this is this reminder that we are all caught up in this collective trauma of separation. And sometimes those people who appear to be the ones that are very disconnected have a very hurting little child inside them. And that is also to be not, I know we need to be in our true eldership, say no to the energy that appears to be in its trauma, not caring, separated, disconnected. But in doing so, there's a need to really remember that they too need our compassion. I mean, another point, and it sounds like I'm some kind of totally over the top born again Christian, but back to Jesus again, I'm really aware of the importance of forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. I think that's a really integral part of this eldership, that we don't other people. And I think othering is something me and Rebecca have also talked about, that this is another part of this, the you know, we can come into our material existence and embody all of this love, this wisdom, and all of this without having to make anyone wrong or other anyone in any way. We simply can be the wise elder who says, no, that isn't the way to go. From that place, that vision of our oneness with all beings, including animals and the earth and all the creatures and humanity. Sorry, Hen. I just
I
want to
know,
bring
no,
that in. It's
that's
really,
right. And the only thing that I think I've been talking a little bit about this is is the principle of limitation, and the need to establish good laws, rules, and limitations, because it does seem there's a lot of craziness going on. There's lots of madness and very bad government, and people being mean, and you know, all that stuff. And
yes,
as Fern just said, you know, well, as many people have said, you look at Donald Trump and you see the little tiny, the toddler,
yeah.
or you know, in so many politicians, you see or leaders, a young person, a very young child having a tantrum, or
Yes.
insisting on having its way, or taking all the sweets, or you know, whatever.
Or not really knowing what to do and pretending like the Wizard of Oz to be
Yes,
someone who's very grown up
so,
and knows what to
so
do.
much
And
Wizard
actually
of
underneath they don't.
energy about, and in that, I mean, the ideal with that is that the Capricorn, a strong Capricorn, someone with a sort of healthy Capricorn energy will say no.
Yes.
I mean, God knows I was an overly indulgent parent and not very good at saying no to my kids. But there comes a moment where you must stop now. You know, you mustn't do that. Somebody will get hurt if you do that.
Yes.
And you know, and I don't know how we do that, but the human race is amazing. We have to figure that out, how to set good limitations and boundaries, good laws, you know, good fair laws, so that people don't get hurt. And that's a Capricornian thing. It's the wisdom of
And
the
I think,
elder.
you know,
Yeah,
perhaps we see in people great Capricorns who we have seen,
yeah,
like Martin Luther King,
yes,
who stood up around the whole issue of racism. And although it's taken a long time and that message is still kind of endeavoring to seep through, he stood, and he did actually, you know, inspire other people to
Yeah.
stand with him. And they did actually have to stand it was pretty frightening to be there in their vulnerability, being non-violent, refusing to take up weapons, actually standing in their vulnerability and just saying, no, this is not okay anymore.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, Martin Luther King's a really great example.
Yes.
And, you know, as I was saying to Rebecca earlier, Greta, what's her name again? I've
Greta
forgotten.
Thunberg.
Yes, another young Capricorn with many planets in Capricorn, just sitting by herself outside Parliament in her country, day in and day out, just turning up with her banner, and slowly people joined her. But she was sitting alone for, I think it was months. I can't remember how long. I did read it. Months, just sitting alone in all weather, just standing for the earth, standing for, you know, what is happening to
Yeah.
species is extinction, and our planet is, you know, is being is dying, or at least is
Of being
being
hurt. Yeah.
extremely
Destroyed. Yeah.
damaged. It won't die perhaps, but being extremely damaged by our lack of responsibility. And there she stood, and slowly people joined her, and she became, and still is, a great inspiration to enormous amounts of young people.
Yep.
And you know, there are many, many examples. There are many
But she's
wonderful.
a Capricorn, isn't she? You said she's got a stellium in.
Well, that's what I just said, hadn't you?
Yeah.
Missed me. I said, she's got many, many planets in Capricorn. She has 5 planets in Capricorn, and Capricorn, for astrologers out there, Capricorn on the midheaven. She has Moon and Saturn and Sun and Chiron and Mercury all in Capricorn on the midheaven. I think, and one other planet. So quite a stellium in Capricorn on the midheaven. So really strongly embodying the Capricornian energy, just like she speaks, just like that. She hangs in
Yes,
there,
it does. Yeah.
patient, she's persevering, she's very committed, she's loyal to this one pointed cause that she knows will bring about something that will be for the well-being of all beings.
Yeah.
You know, and she's only very young, but she's already speaking to
Yeah.
leaders of the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's, yeah, one of the many examples of people who have Capricorns who have endeavored to bring something, you know, over the years, to say, hey, we need to incorporate this in our vision, because the vision won't work if we don't.
Yeah.
And you know,
That's absolutely it. The vision won't work if we don't create the structure, the form in which to operate. And that is, if
which
anybody can
means
take anything
incorporate.
from what we're saying, as Jupiter and Saturn are, you know, finishing their journey through Capricorn and preparing to go into Aquarius, your vision won't work if you don't get the form, if you don't follow some kind of ethics and rules, and have a good structure.
Incorporate.
Yeah.
I think also don't incorporate the whole picture in the vision. It's, you know, potentially a very holistic view that can be brought in
Yeah.
if we incorporate, if we use, you know, what the unicorn brings in a way, is this holistic vision, and incorporating the soul, the spirit. That whole thing has to be incorporated. We need to bring that essence into form,
Yeah.
which takes everything into account, and it takes into account that we can't operate alone. We need to be,
Yeah.
you know, whatever way we do it, we need to recognize that we're dependent on air and earth and other beings and other creatures.
Yeah.
That so it all has to be incorporated into whatever structures we build.
There's got to be, I mean, and we need a vision. I think there's, you know, this journey of Pluto through Capricorn has shown us the flaws and failings in our structures,
That
in
we've
our
lost
legal
our vision.
system, you know, in our value system. You know, our value system is very distorted.
Yes.
So we need a vision. We need this Aquarius energy that's coming. We need Jupiter to see something, that to invent something that doesn't exist, just as Hammurabi did, you know, or the Babylonians did it all those centuries ago.
It's here already. That in a way, isn't it? It's just in a way. I mean, if Jupiter could ground itself,
That's
you know, as
that's
it
the
can in
challenge. Yeah.
Capricorn, the potential is not for Jupiter to be running off in all sorts of directions, but Jupiter to be grounded,
Yeah.
and bring its vision groundedly down, so that we can, you know, so that that vision, which, I mean, with Pluto's kind of wonderful ability to really face everything, you know, to face loss and face, you know, to actually live in this world in a way that's going to mean that all beings can live, we do have to cut back a lot. I mean, we are over, you know, we're living, I mean, I remember reading somewhere where, you know, different countries live as if they live as if we've got 6 planets or 10 planets. And then we have African countries living as if we've got quarter of a planet. You know, it's like America and lots of parts of Europe live as if we've got millions of planets, you know, not millions, but lots. And we have to start, in a way, we have to start facing some losses and some, what, you know, Pluto brings that ability to actually face some losses, let go of our need to, you know, to have so much, and to actually start, you know, start living as if we have one planet, and as if, you know, we have a population of, you know, many, many people, and we all need to share this beautiful planet and live in harmony with our resources.
That is of course, I don't want to talk about Aquarius too much, but that is the essence of Aquarius, is shared resources, learning to live together, with everybody being of equal value, and but we need a vision. We do need a vision. It's not that we don't need a vision. We do need a vision of things, how things can be different, but I'm always willing to be surprised, because when a vision comes, it tends to be something you haven't already thought of. And I'm willing to be surprised by what the next few years may bring. But I suppose the important thing about now, well, you know, not to panic, but it's like, is to really get this Capricorn thing, is to really get the whole, the way that we live, the values that we live by, the societies that we have created, the corruption that has been exposed over the years of the journey through of Pluto. And Pluto's not finished with Capricorn, actually. The abuses of power, that's Pluto. We haven't talked so much about Pluto, but maybe that for another day. But digging away in the underworld to show the corruption, to show the power of the plutocrats, the oligarchs, and to take on, to understand that what Fern was just saying about responsibility, that we've lived for, you know, at least 100 years, as if there was a ladder that we had to climb, and that's another image to do with Capricorn. And if we can get high enough up, we're going to get all the money and all the wealth and all the riches, and we're going to have 2 houses and 4 cars, and it's though that needs to, something about that, it needs to be moderated at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, Pluto also brings that letting go, doesn't it? I mean, one of Pluto's gifts is death and rebirth. So
Yeah,
that let go.
absolutely. That may not be quite yet because Pluto hasn't finished with Capricorn, but it is for
We're
something
doing it.
aware
We're
of.
in that process, aren't we?
Yeah,
We're in
we
the
are in
process
that
of
process.
letting go, and
Yeah,
we're in the process of sort of some of those, some of the gifts that Pluto brings. The fact that people have been quite fixated on on trying to protect each other from dying with the virus. That and I'm not saying that's not a good thing, but I am saying that we also need to face death through Pluto. I think that all of this, if we look out at what the world is showing us, one of the other things that's showing us is death, and is the loss of life. And this has been happening to many species for some
yeah.
time, sixth extinction
And
of,
people.
but when it starts to be,
Yeah,
when people start to feel like it could be us,
yeah,
they suddenly notice. And there's been lots of dying happening in Africa, and there's been lots of dying happening in the Middle East, but when it suddenly is in the West and it's starting to affect people in the UK and people in America and people in Europe, suddenly we all go, oh my God. So death is something that's coming to us as well. And I think that's one of the gifts of Pluto and Capricorn,
yep,
actually so we do need to face death. We do need to face our mortality.
yeah,
And we do need to look at the fears that come up when we face death. And that is part of this journey. And although, as Rebecca says, Pluto will be with us for a bit longer and we have more time with this journey, the thing is that it is at the moment with Jupiter conjuncting, I think is actually bringing that up strongly,
yes,
and this winter. And it's really important to take that on, to actually, to be able to be with death,
yeah,
our own death, our loved one's death. And also the small dyings, the dying of aspects of our identification, so that we actually are dying perhaps to a recognition of confrontation with what are we attached to, what are we identified with,
yep,
and returning maybe to some of the true soul values, and really noticing that we care, and that's soul value, and that we love, and that we do, some of us anyway, are really yearning for that state of peace, and inner and outer peace, not just outer peace. We'll never have outer peace until we have inner peace, until we stop, that inner warring is being manifest all the time in the outer world.
yeah.
And I think that's an important aspect of this doorway.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying, because you're the archetype of Pluto is the lord of death, he's the lord of the underworld. And what Fern was saying about it, it is, oh God, it is the first existential fear. It's the fear of
Yes.
death. In my model of existence, you come from universal consciousness, you make a descent, and you come into parents, and into a womb, and through a birth canal into a body, into a life, and into the horoscope, and you're dancing with the energies. But what I think the first thing that happened when we're born is, oh my God, I can die. This vehicle is not permanent.
Yeah.
This wonderful, this incredible, organic, self-healing, body, but it will come to an end, and we can die. And in terms of characterology, for anybody who knows what that is, this is the schizoid stage. It's the first thing, the baby is born, and it's, oh my God, my being alive means that I'm going to die. My life threatens my life.
Yeah.
And that fear, if it is not somehow held in infancy, in experience, in life experience, doesn't bring some kind of reassurance, then it becomes a massive driving force to overcome. And that,
And in most cases, it doesn't, does it? In most cases, it doesn't get
no, but
that.
that is the driving force for the madness, I think, that we are experiencing in so many directions at the moment.
Yeah.
Is that and I'm not saying that I've got this one cracked, but facing death, facing mortality, you know, I was going to quote Carlos Castaneda, but he's probably not. You know, it's like that. You know, Don Juan does say, you know, you death is always your ally. It's walking with you, and I think people who have had near death experiences, when they come back to life, they sometimes have a fantastic level of creativity and aliveness because they appreciate the sacredness of this gift of life and the wonder of it.
Yes, but they also come back imbibed in spirit, don't they? Because they often have those moments where they realize that they are more than their, you know, even though we love this body and we're a manifestation, we also know that we are more than this body.
Yes, and
so
that's
in that
great.
moment of reconnecting with their great spiritual being and their great spiritual presence, they return with that, infused with that, and they often have this amazing, as Rebecca says, this amazing light pouring out of them.
Yeah, and we all have that too. You know, that as I think you said earlier on, we are these vast beings. We use a tiny percentage of our essence, of our, you know, the great light that we are, and that's fine as well. But I think when you know that, when I don't want to make too many rules, but you know, but coming from that place where consciousness is rooted in spirit and love and so on, then death is not this great horror, the great disaster that it can be for people who have only not taught, you know, where if the value is all about achievement and ambition and money and accumulation and status,
which disconnects us from each other and means that we go into these polarities and opposing, and we got to keep ourselves above the others and push those ones, and they have to be poor so we can be rich. It's
and
like,
it
oh my God.
and the only reason you would do that is to try and overcome this
terror.
basic fear, this basic trauma.
It's a terror in our gut, isn't it, hon? It's like this terror lodged in our gut that goes, no, we've got to survive. It's really down in the heart, isn't it? It's right down in the gut.
And more money and more things, because as if they will protect us. So this is very big stuff, and it's not like you just flip a switch and think, okay, I get it, death doesn't matter. That's not it. But it's somehow, and when you're talking about grief tending and all that, it's somehow being able to live with that so that you're not driven by it. You're not driven by the fear in a very unconscious way. So you've got to keep accumulating. Somehow, and this is such a thing of Saturn and Capricorn, standing still, feeling the earth under your feet, putting your roots down into the earth, knowing that we are, you know, that you are in a world of form, that you're in a world of matter, and that bad things happen and painful things happen and you will die. And I'm going to live and breathe and live and love every second that is available to me here. And that's
like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said, hun, to live until we say goodbye. You know, when people are facing serious illnesses, she would say, and you live right. I mean, I keep thinking of my beloved friend Maeve Gavin, who was swimming in the loch the day before she died. She was, you know, everything was breaking down, and yet she was permeated with life and love, and shining out this love. And she lived right up to that moment, and yet now to this day I often see her and feel her with me, supporting me in this work now. And she's not dead, she's out there supporting what's happening, you know. And there's many out there who have apparently died in their body who are helping us at this moment through this really powerful time. And I think that's another message I'd like to leave people with. We're not alone. There is help out there. We are getting a lot of support. And me and Rebecca have both really noticed this and witnessed this. And I think it's so profound and so important that we know we are getting support,
Yeah.
and that the reality of what looks like quite, some of the things Rebecca has described, pretty quite heavy, and although Pluto's bringing all this toxicity and corruption up for us to see, it can be a bit daunting sometimes, and some of what's happening has been daunting. And I know many people have become very depressed, and there's been enormous amount of suicide on the planet in the last year. Probably, if we were to look at the figures, we'd see that there's been more suicide, because all of this is quite daunting. And however, if we remember we are not alone, there is help around us. And for anyone who has any spiritual sense of connection, there is that support around us at the moment, coming really strongly in.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I'm looking at Rebecca's lovely painting behind her that emanates this wonderful energetic energy, and reminding everybody about that, that energy that's
Is
there
available.
at this time.
Yeah.
And that we can reach to those, those real soul values that in all spiritual traditions, are seen, in the Buddhism and Christianity and Hindu and pagan. All traditions have this thing of the love of coming together, and really coming from the heart, and coming from that place of wisdom, and grounded in the earth. And the oak tree that Rebecca mentioned is such a wonderful well, it's a Capricorn, one
Yep.
of the Capricorn symbols.
Yep.
It's the tree that is responsible for most life. I mean, I forget how many creatures live on an oak tree, but it's like a massive amount of life it supports, and its root system is big as
Yeah.
its branches.
Yep.
And
Yes.
it's one of the wisest trees on the planet.
Yeah. Yep.
Great
Yes.
elder.
Yes.
I always think of the trees as the guardians of the earth, and the oak tree has that strong
Oh,
sense of guardianship.
absolutely. There was something that was something, and right, because I know, I've talked to people. There's been a lot of suffering, depression, anxiety. It's been building for a few years, but this last year obviously has brought a lot of stuff to a head, a lot of despair. So what I want to say, I don't want to say this in a glib way. It's not it's not a mistake. It's like, it feels like a mistake.
Yes.
For the younger generation, it feels like they've been robbed. Somehow they've been robbed of the opportunity that, certainly that my generation, but previous generations had. And instead of having, free universities and easy opportunity, I'm talking about the UK, to buy houses and that, they got no jobs, they got no money, they got no prospect of buying a house. They don't know what the future holds. There's got climate change. It's like by the time they get around to having grandchildren, it's all going to be completely screwed. So it's dark times for the young. And then they get, like the university students get trapped in their whole residence, and they're not allowed out. And somebody's telling them they can't go home for Christmas and all this. It's a lot of difficulty. So, I hope it doesn't annoy people, but if I say, but it's like there is some kind of if you look at the astrology, all the astrologers are saying, there is a kind of a plan. And Fern and I have been looking, over the years, knowing that this time would come. Not sure exactly when, but knowing that it would come.
Yeah.
And here it is. Here we are. And I don't want to be glib about it. I don't want, especially for young people, to say that this is a piece of cake. It's not. That something is trying to happen, and that is the gift of astrology, because it's always the case when somebody's having even the darkest transit. There's always love, there's always light, there's always wisdom, there's always a way that is wanting to come through. So when the fabric breaks down, and everything is broken, you know, the cracks are where the light gets through. That's when love, you know, when people do heroic things, when
Yes.
they reach out to each other, when you reach that vulnerability, when you meet the unicorn, is when you know, when you actually start to radiate that loving wisdom light. And that's what's being asked of us, the
Yes.
human race, the human consciousness. And right now, you know, it kind of looks like we're in deep distress and panic and grasping and controlling and othering like nobody's business.
Yes.
Any opportunity to other, and we're there, and the Facebook algorithms are pushing you down this way and the other ones are pushing you that way, and it feels like a mistake. It feels like everything's gone wrong. And as though that, I'm sorry, I am speaking as a person living in the United Kingdom. I'm sure that there are people in other parts of the world where you think it's only just started going wrong. You know, you try being bombed if you live in Iraq in
Yes.
2003.
But
Something's
whatever
trying to
way,
happen.
something is trying to happen here.
Something is trying to happen. Something is trying to come
And
through.
it is like Rebecca said, you know, that sort of, in a way, it is a mystery. It is an unfolding
Yeah.
mystery. And one of the other things I guess I'd really like to encourage everybody to do is just to give them to really this stillness or this stopping, this, you know, if lockdown represents, if we take all the
Yes.
politics out of it and we just see it as an opportunity to look within, to stop for a while, to just go beyond our distractions and step back from, you know, it's great having fun watching Netflix and being online, and all these things are great fun, but
Great.
let's also incorporate some time in our everyday life just for a moment to sit outside if you've got a garden, or to sit inside if you haven't, and just stop and just be still for a while and be quiet and just have time to really reach inside and find a place where you have a moment of stillness, and recognize that, you know, we're actually in some kind of mystery and the
Yes.
vision isn't clear yet, and that's okay. You know, we can, you know, we have enough vision, from, you know, our ancestors of love and of the things Rebecca's talking about, to hold us through the darkest hours, and that enables that mystery, you know, to start unfolding, where, you know, some of the visions that are already starting to happen can start to build up and come together, and you know, bring a new paradigm, which is what this is really about.
Yes. Yes.
That we do need to stop. We do need to all have moments, even if it's just a short
Yeah.
moment, quietly while you're doing the dishes.
Yes.
If you're a parent and you've got loads going on, that quiet time at night when the children are in bed, or even sitting on the loo, you know, when the door is shut and you actually get a chance to, just for a moment, even if it's only for a minute or two,
Yeah.
just to take that time to take a breath,
Yeah.
and just go, just for a moment. And if you have the opportunity, as I do, to have many more moments, great. Take those many more moments. Spend as much time in nature as you can, or
Yeah.
even if it's just sitting next to a house plant, you know, to have that moment to be with a different life form.
Yeah. Yeah.
All these things help this Capricorn energy. You know, Pan, who's associated with Capricorn, is the god of nature, and
Yeah.
he, you know, he brings this. You know, when communities are modeled on his energy, like the Findhorn community, it's all based around this wonderful fertility of nature and this ability to bring forth the food we need to eat, and the trees that give us shelter and help us to breathe. And even if we only have one little house plant to sit next to, that it's just be in communion with that one plant.
Yeah. Yes, I think that is, you know, talking about the sort of this big transit coming to an end, and have we learned the lessons of Capricorn? And to me, that is the biggest lesson of Capricorn, is stillness. And for me, it's much easier to do that in nature, even just under the sky, than indoors. But but you can do it indoors.
Because wherever we are, we have our own nature, which is our own body.
But it's
And
the
so
thing about
even we,
stillness is and it's not easy. I have a lot of Jupiter, I have a lot of Aquarius. It's very easy for me to run energetically, mentally, to run and leap kind of thing. And it requires an effort to come out of that mindset into the stillness. It's not you don't just flip a switch. You kind of do, but it's not, I don't find it easy.
no.
I always have to like my big person has to take my little person and sit down and be quiet. Much easier for me in nature than indoors, but I can do it. After all these years, I can. And what I find is that I get a shift of consciousness. Mind racing, thinking about this, thinking about that. And when I've just been with myself and breathing, suddenly clunk. And I've moved into a different state of consciousness where I'm actually experiencing myself in my body, feet on the ground or whatever, part of the earth, in a body, and my, and my stillness and my essence, my great light inside. And the more I can do that, the more of that stillness, the minute I'm there, then all of this diminishes. The impact of that racing mind, fear, anxiety, whatever. And from that stillness, from that embodied place, the worry, the tension of all that just drifts away.
Yeah. Yes.
And then when you
And patience,
act from that place, you
isn't it?
act in a different way. You don't do the rushing and the jumping and the anxiety. The action that comes from that grounded place is calm and certain, and it has intention and purpose. And this is, for me, this is Capricorn. This is Capricorn. Stillness, stop, be still, be quiet, find that inner peace, and then move from that place. And your movement will be different than if you're doing the Jupiter kangaroo hops all over the place. Sorry, Jupiter.
But that's, in a way, that is that thing of taking the one seat that I was talking about before, Rebecca, where we really commit to just sitting.
Yeah.
And the patience of Capricorn supports us through all those whizzy minds.
Yep.
Just come into this. And I just wanted to say that one thing that, if we haven't got the wonderful opportunities I have to be in nature on Dartmoor, and many people do have, but many people in the city don't, to remember that this body is nature. This body we have is nature. This is nature. And so even if we just have this body to support us, to really remember that this breathing being that this body is, this wonderful body that we have, can help us to take us into that stillness by just following our breath down, 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 and just feeling our bellies moving like babies. As is always talking about the way the belly moves of a baby, and the baby's belly just moves as it breathes. So just coming down and breathing down into our bellies and just letting it move, and just feeling the creature that we are. We are creatures, like other creatures. We are nature. This body is nature. It is a creature. And the creature itself, if we let her guide us, this body, mine's female, some people's are male, but just letting that body wisdom guide us down into our body can bring that stillness more easily. And having the patience when our mind takes us off on little stories and thoughts and what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing and trying to solve some problem, just to remember to come back to that breath and come back to that breathing and that, our senses. Our senses are, Capricorn is an earth sign, so it has that the sensuality of an earth sign, and that senses can guide us into the quiet still, patient place of Capricorn.
And that is, you know, if we're talking about this, the difficulties of this 2020 and the journey of the Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in Capricorn, that is the essence of those three. You know, Pluto associated with the instincts, you know, with the belly,
With the gut, yeah.
and Capricorn with the spine and the bones. And then Jupiter, you know, like the connection to the beyond, to the divine, the direct knowing of connection with God and spirit and love and the oneness of everything. When those three come together, that is bliss and power and wisdom, and that is what this time is about.
Yeah.
If you can, you know, if you can feel, if you know who has the power, me, where is it? Here, down in my guts and my belly, my instincts. And, you know, and have I got the strength to see this through? Yeah, I've got my spine, I've got my bones, I've got my Saturn, which is the unshakable energy of the oak tree, the bridge between heaven and earth. And I've got my wonderful connection to Jupiter, to love and vision and laughter and joy.
Yes.
And that's the three of them. And it's all, you know, manifest because it's Capricorn, earth sign. It's here, you know, and if you can find that in these next few, God knows, that's a bit of a challenge with what we're going into in these next few weeks.
Even I was thinking before, even if, you know, we're not able to totally find all of that,
Yeah.
even if we can start to just let ourselves see, you know, that we are lost in fear, or that we are, you know, even if we can just take a little step back, just one little step back, you know, take that backward step just a little bit with the help of the taking time, stillness, meditation, if we, or being in nature, walking, or, you know, whatever works for us, if we can take that little step back so that we can look, and we may not have all the answers yet, and we may not come into our great eldership in that moment, but if we can just step back a little bit, then that already is the beginning of starting to see, and starting to let a little bit go of all that identification with our inner critic, and that beating yourself up, and that,
spoken about the critic,
all of that. I mean, yeah. That was another thing I was going to say about Capricorn, and particularly Saturn, that when we give our power away to someone outside ourselves, we end up manifesting a very big critic, because the critic is holding all the all
another driver, isn't it, in these times?
Yeah.
I think we should sort of wind things up now, and we could come back to that when
but even just to start to recognize that every time we give our authority away, just to come back and remember that we are the best authority in our lives, and we're the one that knows best what is needed for us, and we are the one that knows best what gift we're bringing.
Yeah.
Just to come back to let that inner authority start to guide us to our true autonomy. That would be a start.
Yes, it would. I'm tempted to say that inner authority doesn't mean joining some cult or clan or political party.
That's not inner authority. That can be giving authority away to someone again, doesn't it? Can't it?
Exactly. It's coming back to me and my knowing and my spiritual support and my essence, which is longing to shine.
And that voice inside that can guide us if we only but listen to it.
Yeah.
Which is why Rebekah keeps saying about stillness and stopping.
Yeah.
That's when we can hear a little bit what's wanting to come through us.
Yes.
Yeah. But yes, we better wind up.
Yes, we'll come back. A lot is going to happen in these next few days. Well, I don't know why, but it is a big deal. The American presidential election affects the future of the world, and here we go. A lot of people have already posted their votes. So we'll be back. Maybe after the election, if we're still
Uh,
alive.
are we going to be, but we're going to be going through this doorway on the 12th of November.
It's when it all starts to break up on the 13th, 14th of November, or, you know, in that week, towards the end of that week, you'll feel, I think everybody will feel it. This rock, you know, just starting to break up, and
Or maybe we'll feel our inner mountain. Our roots firmly placed. I mean, you know, that
yeah,
the oak tree, the mountain, they're all great symbols of Capricorn, aren't they? This
yep.
mountain that's on the earth, that, you know, is like our bum sitting on the earth, is that
In
base
fact,
of
that's very much, that is exactly the, you know, if there's any kind of advice about going through this turbulent time and this possibly extremely turbulent few weeks, is come back to the mountain, come back to the oak energy. Just know that you have, you know, you're a massive spirit in a physical body, and you can do it. You can cope with this. You don't have to be terrorized in, you know, in any way. It is a birth, it's a process, it's a breaking down, and we're in the breaking down bit at the moment. Then be that oak tree, and yeah, no matter what occurs.
yes, no matter what occurs, best stay still with your truth. And
Yeah,
I think
come back to
keep
truth.
your feet on the ground, you know,
Yeah,
keep that. I mean, I have been given a wonderful image by one of my spiritual teachers, Mukti, who's Aj's wife. And that is that I am this mountain, and there's and I always see this heart in the mountain. So
yeah,
there's this mountain, it's like where my feet touch the ground, this mountain goes down a bit beneath the earth, and I'm within that, and there's this great heart, and this is my symbol, and inside the mountain is a heart, and then at the top of the mountain there's a sun
yeah,
shining, and this is my guiding light, and I keep this energy, this sense of this, and it really helps, like, yes. And in those moments where I feel a little bit wobbly, I just remember that, and I come back to that.
yes,
And I've got my, you know, my oak roots down, but I've also got this sense of being the mountain. And I think this is an image that's really just touches some people deeply,
yeah,
especially when there's a heart in the center of it.
yeah. That is a lovely image on which to end, I think, the mountain with the heart. Um,
And the light shining
and
at the top.
the light radiating from above. So
Okay.
yes, right. That will do. We'll be back. And yes,
And blessings on our journeys.
blessings on everyone. And yeah, just a quick one. Yeah, whatever occurs with the American election, they be for the highest good of all.
Yes.
Yeah.
May whatever happens in all places be for the highest good,
Yeah.
for the greatest good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Okay.
That's it then. Here we go.
Many blessings.
Many blessings.
Bye.
Bye.